Hello and welcome to the Infrastructure Domain Session 1. This is part of the buildingSMART International Summit in Lillestrøm 2023. Thank you for joining us today. My name is John Proctor and I am your moderator. You can see details of today's session on the screen. We have a full and varied session with Tiina, Perttula and Jim Plume from the Infrastructure Domain Steering Committee introducing the session, updating you on the roadmap and also the asset operations handover working group activities. We will then hand to Ronald, Bergs and Alexa Mitchell for the bridge projects part of today's session. Ronald will cover the bridge test instructions update, and Alexa, also from the Infrastructure Domain Steering Committee, will cover the BIM for Bridges project from ASHTO in the US. The session is scheduled to last for 90 minutes, including time for questions at the end. The session's been recorded and it will be made available in the replay section of the event as soon as possible. Before I hand over to Tiina, I'd like to remind you that this is a hybrid event. For online attendees, your microphones will remain muted. If you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please use the comments on the online platform. I will prompt you for that. And in the room, please keep background noise to a minimum. And if you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand. I'd also like to bring to your attention the information that is on the screen now. That buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process for their adoption is transparent, and that standards that are developed do not favour any particular provider, but are open, non-binding and accessible to all. Please take note of our antitrust code of conduct. Okay, with that done, I'm going to pass over to Tiina and I'll bring up the slides, Tiina.
Thanks, John. So it's my pleasure to open the infra domain session today and in this summit. Hope that you can hear my voice. I need to speak quite close to the microphone, I noticed. But in this session, there will be many updates what has happened between the summit. So the last summit was in Rome. So what we have been focused on as a steering committee of infra domain. And I'm Tiina Perttula, as John already mentioned. I'm the chairwoman of the infra domain steering committee. So welcome all. And it was I was glad to see that there is also someone who hasn't been in these summits before. So welcome to the community. So that's the reason that I would always like to start with this slide. So we do have the mission and vision inside the infra domain. This has been created already almost 10 years or 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago. And the mission to us is to combine and enhance and develop open standards for intelligent data, which enable process and data integration for infra. But the more important is the scope. So we are focusing about the information exchange and processes standards to support effective management of constructed built environment and also linking the BIM and GIS. So this linking BIM and GIS has been very much in the focus of the infra domain since the beginning, because of course the data is coming from the various sources in the infra project itself. So it's not only about maybe the BIM standards, although those are the standards that we are focusing when we are, for example, extended the IFC format. But this has been a good basis for us to guide the work throughout the years. Then the opening session presenters, they were shown in the John slides as well, so I don't go any further details. We have the question and answer session after all presentations, so maybe if you have just one quick comment, we can take those between the presentation, but mainly we are having this conversation part after, so that's why we want to have enough time for all the presenters. Then about how our infra domain looks like. So we do have the steering committee, and inside the steering committee, we do have the different type of roles. So Jim is here today with me. Tim Plume is our deputy chair in the steering committee. Then we have the technical leader, which is Phil Jackson. Phil is not here in the Lillestrøm summit physically, so he is attending remotely for some of the sessions, unfortunately. And then we have the infra-room project or infra-domain project steering committee. So that's the steering committee for the project run under the infra domain. And in the infra domain project steering committee, the chair of the committee is Marek Zuchowski, and the Jim Plume is the deputy for the project steering committee. And of course, in the project steering committee, there are involved the stakeholders and the project managers to discuss about the coming topics and the development areas inside those infra-domain projects. And in the below, in orange, you can see the project that has been already finalized under the infra domain. So we have the alignment, we do have the common schema. The common schema was focused about the maybe subdomains that were same for each of these separate domains like bridges and roads. So the subdomains were like geotechnics and drainage and these type of elements. And then we have the bridge, road and ports and waterways that has been finalized in the past. The tunnel project is still up and running, and tomorrow we have one session dedicated to the latest development in the tunnel project. And then we have had the alignment deployment project already like 2015-16. So this has been a long journey inside the infra domain, and we are very proud today to have the extension for IFC 4.3 that covers infra and the ISO process that is almost in the end. We hope it will be finalized till the end of this year. So this has been a long journey, but when I look back, I think the pace has been quite amazing, even though when we are running the project, it's time to time seems a bit slow, but nevertheless, this is a standardization and sometimes it takes time. Then about our focus areas. So roadmap for 23-27 is of course in the core of everything, and Tim will get the latest updates. The roadmap itself is almost finalized, so it just needs a final approval for the SCTE. Then, of course, the question about these technical services like IDS, BSDD, and use case management, how to work with them. And actually, the next session together with the railway domain concentrates about the user experience related to these kind of tools and services. Then a short update also from the asset operation handover activity proposal. So what we have been focused inside the infra domain and how we think to move forward with the project itself. Then the ISO process I already mentioned. So we have been monitoring the ISO process inside the steering committee, and we have been kept updated about the kind of outcomes from the votings and etc. And I'm very pleased to have a good group from buildingSMART International to drive through this ISO process. And of course, there is a lot of liaison with other standardization committees like CEN TZ 442, and also now there have been established the BIM GIS group also inside the buildingSMART International, together with the OTC, and one of our steering committee, Mark, is appointed on behalf of infra domain to be part of that BIM GIS working group. And I hope that in the future we will get also updates from that committee or working group that what are maybe the roadmap for their work, what they will be focused on the coming years. But then how to move forward? I think that one of these topics will be attached in the roadmap work as well, which Jim will present in a short while. But of course, this how to maybe, I'm not sure that how many of you were here yesterday when they saw the technical roadmap, for example, the IFC 5 was mentioned. So it's a question about how to move from IFC 4.3 or 4.4 to the IFC 5. And then what we as an infra domain should know about the changes and how can we be part of maybe those groups or technical committees that will work together with the modernization of IFC itself. But then it's when we are coming from the infra domain, then it's of course a question about the life cycle itself. So how to move from the project information to asset information, how to implement ISO 19650. I know that it has been at least partly implemented or maybe in some of the organizations already, but there are huge questions related to how to move from the PIM model to AIM model. Also the asset register, the databases where all the existing data is located nowadays, how that data fits to the IFC and when can we best utilize the data that has been already collected, and is there a way to harmonize maybe some of the property sets or maybe the values or other things, because there are a lot of infra owners inside the infra domain. And also it's a question about the IFC as archive format, because these are legal processes that almost in every country these different design phases needs to go through. So it's the processes where the documentation is created. So what if the IFC or some digital format will be the archiving format in the future, and we need to have a kind of further investigation for those topics as well. But this all links to the roadmap work very well and fits there, and that's why we would like to hope to see many of you working with this topic with us in the future in different working groups. And also we need to understand better that what needs to standardized or harmonized. It could be cross domains, so together with the railway domain or airport domain or construction domain, and also it could go to the national level, to how to implement these international standards to national level. Then there might be some kind of requirements coming through organization, like owner organization, infrastructure owner organization in different countries. And nowadays, maybe some of these requirements are project-based mainly, so we do create the BIM execution plan for the project level, but how to then get the circle to be full with the life cycle and the ISO 19650. So these are really interesting and crucial topics for us to cover. Then a little bit about our sessions during the summit. So next session we will have together joint session with the railway domain, and it's about the use case management and building smart data dictionaries. And it's mainly it's not a technical session at all, so it's kind of the user experience and how to move forward with inside both of these domains, how we want to establish some kind of collaboration between different domains, because these are topics that has been recognized in many domains inside buildingSMART, and maybe also how to get our voice heard, especially as infrastructure and railway owners. Then the last session for today is the Nordic collaboration. So we have many interesting presentations during the last session. So there will be a presentation about the Nordic hub collaboration. So it's the Nordic chapters together. They have this chapter collaboration, and then there is also collaboration, so-called BIM Nordic BIM client group, and it's with the infrastructure organization in the Nordic countries has put their forces together and try to together maybe kind of guide how this implementation in different Nordic countries should be implemented at the same time, and also sharing some huge cross-national topics together. And then in that session, we have a few examples from the different type of Nordic project which are related to this data management and harmonize maybe information or the topics that are related to information or the processes in BIM. And then tomorrow we have the tunnel session, so IFC for tunnel. It's in the afternoon, and then in the last session tomorrow will be the panel conversation with the software vendors and the infra owners, and it's run by Marek Suchowski. So that's kind of a good way to engage the members from the infra domain to our activities. And then the last session is session number 5. It was advertised yesterday in the opening plenary. It's related to this initiative about the ports and waterway project and phase 2, the next steps. It could be that in the future there will be a separate domain that will handle the project, but we'll see when we have the further information about how it will be organized, the management of the project. But the first phase of this ports and waterway project was done under the infrastructure domain. So that's the reason why it's in our agenda in this summit. And I would like to also to advertise the InfraBIM Open in the Lyon. It's in the beginning or the end of January next year, and the call for papers is still open for 2 weeks. This is the conference that has been held in Tampere and in Lyon, and it's the collaboration between the buildingSMART France and buildingSMART Finland. So if you have good project examples or good studies or research in your own country, I really kind of encourage you to send your proposal there and share the best practices and knowledge cross borders. So I will now hand over to Jim to talk more about the roadmap and the asset operation handover project.
Thank you very much. I'm going to talk about 2 topics. I'm going to give you the latest update, as it were, on the roadmap first, and I'm going to talk about the asset operations handover work that we've been doing. And I'm not. This has been presented at several summits over the last year or so, and so this is really the culmination of it. We held the way we organized the planning for the workshop was by a number of local chapter workshops that started in 2021. So it's really been a long journey and ended up in 2023 with a US chapter meeting workshop. And so what we've done is taken all of the input from our communities through those workshops. The workshops were all run independently. They had their own agendas. They had their own way of working, but they produced some output, some ideas, and we collated those as a community, as an infrastructure domain community, and put that all together. And we've created, at the end of the day, jumping way forward, this. So this is the final version, and I'll use the word final. I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. But this is the plan for our roadmap going forward from this point, and expressed in a single diagram. I just want to walk you through it very quickly. We don't have a lot of time. There will be a report that will be published. It's almost ready to be published. It just needs an executive summary at the front, which is a request from the Stance Committee executive. So we'll add that 1-page summary at the front, probably a half-page summary at the front, just that my life has become rather full and I didn't get that done before today. Once that's done, then it will be published, and we'll alert you once it's been published, and we will again talk to it at a what we call them, what's the term we use for the
we're doing an industry forum.
Thank you.
Industry forum in October. Yeah.
My brain is getting tired. So we do have an industry forum coming up, and that'll be the final kind of presentation of this work. So let me go through it very quickly. Do I have a pointer here? The arrow? No, it doesn't matter. I won't try. So we we first of all classified all of the ideas that came out into 3 different major categories. So out of the chapter workshops, we had suggested activities, and they were all prioritized. So these are the key ones that came out. So they're the ones in yellow. The ones in kind of a pinkish color also came out of the workshops, and they're suggested cross-domain activities. So they're things that don't just belong in the infrastructure domain, but really need collaboration with other domains. And the light blue ones are really the kind of the work that we do routinely as a steering committee to drive the domain. And so they have the responsibility and oversight of the steering committee. So just going through the yellow ones very quickly, and they're all explained in greater detail in the report, so I won't labor it too much. But the things that came out of it were things like there was a need for a IFC for infrastructure user guide, simply recognizing that we've now delivered the extensions, but the community out there is still coming to grips with what IFC means for infrastructure. And so we have an intention or suggestion that we should produce a working paper on that, an information guide. Going down, I should have explained, these are all organized into streams. You can see the streams there, and I think they're all self-explanatory. So if we go down in the use case stream, we do have a project that's been proposed for asset operations handover, and that's come out of the building room and the work of Jeffrey Yolette. And we've been challenged to think about how we as an infrastructure domain should contribute to that work and how we might engage in that issue. And it's been sitting on our table as a steering committee for some time. And about halfway through this year, earlier in this year, we decided we needed to establish a working group to focus on that. And so I'll be reporting on that in a couple of minutes, the output of that. But that will then lead into a asset operations handover project, which is up there in the infra extension projects area, which we are yet to see materialize, but the intention is to run that project. So we're now doing the groundwork as a working group for us to feed into that. Then there's things like the UCM and the need for us to understand how we can exploit that, how we can make use of that in the infrastructure domain. Similarly for BSDD, and there's things that Tiina's already alluded to. There was also a suggestion we need to develop an overview of infrastructure project processes in white papers. That's the idea of that project, is essentially to think about issues to create a high-level BPMN, a process map that shows at an overview level the sorts of use cases that might exist in the infrastructure space that can then be used as a basis for fleshing that out with more detailed use cases. So it's meant to be a high-level one that tries to capture the broad picture. Another one that's suggested is IFC for geospatial and geospatial for infrastructure, and then the role of InfraBIM in delivering digital twins. So what we've tried to do is to place those in a timescale of where we think they might logically sit over the next 5 years. And obviously, most of the activity is moving over to the left because we're not quite sure how it's going to pan out. And I'll come back to that in a moment. I won't go through the rest of them because it's all be detailed in the paper. And I think to spend time that now would be counterproductive. But you can look at that at your leisure and read the report later. But I just want to make a couple of comments about the implementation of this. The roadmap document will be published shortly, as I said. It's important to recognize that the identified activities can only proceed within the timeframe shown in the summary diagram if they receive community support through both participation and funding. And that's really the key challenge that we face as a community. This roadmap isn't just for the steering committee. It's not for the steering committee to make all this happen and to lead all these activities. We're simply the group that is there to facilitate. And so any one of those activities we've identified, and I encourage you to look at the detailed report when it comes out. If you see an activity there which is, as it were, close to your heart, one that you want to get engaged in, then you need to help us drive it. Our aim is to deliver all of these activities within the timeframes that we've talked about, but those timeframes can shift depending on who's available when and where funding is needed, whether funding is available. And so there is really an important challenge for our entire community here, that if you want us to move forward in some of these areas that you as a community through the different chapters have recommended, then we need your energy to do that. We can drive some of them are passionate, we feel passionate about some of them or all of them, but we need your support to make them happen. So this roadmap is intended as a guidance tool for planning purposes and is subject to change and refinement over time. So it's not we talk about this as the final roadmap, which is the result of a few years, 2 years now of activity, but it's actually a living document, and it will only achieve our goals if we as a total community, all of you and all of those outside, who are tuned in virtually to this meeting, plus anyone else in our community. If we don't drive these projects, then they won't happen, these activities. So that's our challenge. Let me go from there to my second topic, which I'll try and get through fairly quickly. This asset operations handover project has been on our agenda for a while. It's been proposed out of the building room. It emerges out of the need to think about how we actually effectively hand over data from the construction process into the operations and maintenance process as almost a second iteration, a second version of the Kobe kind of approach, and how that might affect the industry, both in the building domain as well as in the infrastructure domain. And the more you think about that, it's a very major need for us, but it needs to be fleshed out. And so we set up a working group to look at that issue, and we established the membership comes from Europe, US, and Australia, so it's global. Excuse me. We held a series of online meetings as a small working group. This working group's probably been running since just before the middle of this year, so of last year. So it's still, this year. So it's fairly new. We held a series of online meetings ahead of the northern summer. Then there was a bit of a hiatus because all of the northerners go on holidays in summer, whereas we in the south, we don't. We keep on going. And we decided we would hold an industry virtual workshop on Wednesday, the 6th of September, which is only 2 weeks ago. And there we had around 20 self-selected participants. So we sent out a very wide invitation to that. But I was very careful to say, we only want you to register for this if you really want to contribute, if you're going to come and make positive contributions. We don't want you to come and just to enjoy the show and to listen. And we ended up with about 20 self-selected participants, which was excellent. That was the sort of number we were looking for. And we did have global representation. So this now, after 2 weeks later, is a preliminary report of the outcomes of that activity, of that workshop. During the workshop, I had to sort of set the scene. And so I'm using the same slides now as I used to set the scene here. So this just will help you to understand the context within which we are working as an infrastructure domain. So history has demonstrated that trying to force fit a single monolithic handover specification to suit any potential use case for all domains has not been successful. It's just we haven't achieved. So instead, this project will define a standardized but flexible modular framework for documenting handover requirements for all facilities defined in 4.3, including building infrastructure. Keywords there are standardized but flexible and modular. So you'll see in a minute that it's seen as being a modular structure where it doesn't try and cover every use case. It tries to set up a framework for identifying appropriate use cases. And so diagrammatically, it looks something like this. And these diagrams come out straight out of the activity proposal that was prepared and put forward by Jeffrey Orlett. So at the top there, you have what has been called the AO handover framework. It's meant to be highly technical, international level, broad way of stakeholders, and will integrate into the IFC schema or the IFC model. So that's kind of the core activity. And then springing from that, there is the two domains, infrastructure and buildings. And the thought is that at the core level, as I'll show in a minute, there will be several modules, and then there'll be a process of mixing and matching those modules and introducing new modules in order to create appropriate use cases. This diagram isn't suggesting what those use cases are. It's simply giving examples of use cases. So part of our aim as a working group in infrastructure is to think about what are the use cases that are important for infrastructure in order to contribute to the design of that framework at the top of the diagram. So that's what I expressed in the next figure. What we're focused on at the moment is not this detail, because that's part of stage 2. That's when the project is running and has already developed the framework. We would then start to look at the detail of in both infrastructure and building. But our focus initially is to look at that framework and what that might look like. And so we so the strategy then for us at the moment is two main components. The core specification that includes a common set of data exchange requirements needed for all handover exchanges and domains, which may be expressed as a base MVD. So the thought that that's one activity, it may lead to another base MVD appropriate to our this particular broad use case of asset handover at the operations phase. And the second is process and templates to identify and specify the domain-specific entities, specific domain entities and the properties required to solve a variety of handover use cases as modules. And so this is where the idea of the modules comes in. Go to the next one. So it's expressed here. So the work that's already been done and is being, is historical is things like COBE and FM handover. That's all the attempts to tackle this issue in the past. Now we're proposing a framework to have a core and a set of generic modules that can then be used to assemble particular use cases across the two domains. So the blue is building and the green is infrastructure. And again, none of these are locked in. They're simply conceptually placeholders, if you like. And so our challenge now is to think about what sort of use cases are going to be needed in order to help us understand what that core might look like. So we're trying to develop a framework. We're coming at this with no preconceived ideas. We're coming at it from it's a search. It's a process of discovery. So in our workshop, the framework is expressed above is IFC focused. So there's this tendency to think in terms of IFC terms. So we've talked about base MVDs. We've talked about the IDS, information delivery specifications, as the tools. But, and there's a big but here, that in our domain, these IFC-based workflows are seen as only half the story. And so we need the industry expertise from our domain, which is you guys in the context of the workshop, it would be participants in the workshop. We need that expertise and experience to identify corresponding alternative exchange formats and associated workflows, because we recognize that, excuse me, in our domain, it's not just all about IFC and building smart standards, it's about all the other sources of information and ideas that may be relevant to this issue. And that is where you, addressing in this context the workshop participants, this is where you come into the picture. So we then set this up as our goal for the workshop. We had two. We wanted to, first of all, explore why this is actually needed. Because one of our challenges at the moment is that we think that this is work that needs to be done, but we don't have much industry support at the moment. We've got a couple of organisations that have put in some base funding, but we need serious funding if we're going to drive this project forward. It'll never happen unless we get that support. So we needed to think about what is the business case? How can we persuade organisations to participate in this activity? And then we spent the second half of it was only a 2-hour workshop. We spent the second half looking at critical use cases that might be used to inform or help us to understand what that framework might look like. Hope that is clear. We then used Miro board, and one of our members of the working group has a license for it, and so she was really able to help us do it. So this is just illustrating, this few slides just illustrate what the Miro board looked like. So here, for example, we were asking people, when we were looking at the business case, we were asking them to think about what the framework might look like. What are the use cases? What are other things that might inform the way the project is structured? And you can see here they had notes that they could grab, and we encouraged them to grab the notes and put comments on. And so there was a very lively activity there as they populated answered those questions with their notes. We then moved on to, this is further on the business case. So that was the what. This is the why, I think. And so we broke it up into, oh, sorry, no, I've got myself confused. This is use cases, thank you. I put a wrong heading up there and I've confused myself totally. So then we went on to the use cases. So we decided to organise the use cases under 3 generic topics. Use cases related to maintenance, use cases that relate to spatial operations, and the other one was spatial hierarchy or spaces. And so we got all these comments put on there. We then asked them to vote on those. So these are the 3 areas of operations, maintenance, and space management, and people voted. This is the voting process, and that finished with these are all the votes. You see that there were people that either didn't vote for whatever reason, and others who weren't able to join the workshop at the last minute. But happily, the Miro board still exists, and people have been able to come in subsequently and add their content to it. We then have, literally in the last few days, have pulled out the key outcomes from that, and that's why Anna very kindly stood up, because she's going to talk quickly to this, because she worked on, this is a first attempt, if you like, at pulling out the outcomes from the business case. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is to provide you an overview of the output. We had a lot of people joining the workshop, and they were very eager to contribute. So we got a lot of input, and this is just to summarize the Miro board and the notes that we got. So this was really to build the business case. What is the value of this project? What can it actually bring to different people? So we wanted to have the big picture to be able to promote this project. And when we asked about why this was important to see the opportunities, people were saying that we need to leverage the value of asset data. So again, to see the value in the data that we create throughout the life cycle. And we need a standardized way of collating all the different information that we create during a project, and especially focusing on the information required for the handover. And then optimization. There's a lot of value in optimization. So that's something that the participants really recognized, to be able to automate this process. And again, increase the quality. So not only the value of the data, but to increase the quality of the data.
You don't have time to go through them all. So.
Yeah. And then we also, you also have to look on the challenges. So what challenges did they see? We use a lot of different systems in the handover process, and that was one of the biggest challenges, and also the unstructured data that already exists within this process. That was also something that was raised as a huge challenge. So really to see the different information needs also for these different use cases. So there's a combination of all the data that you require and be able to map these into different use cases. So that was the opportunities and the challenges. And then we also asked what you actually need to be defined in this project, what should be included in the framework, and what are the main use cases that you see for this project that we need to include. So there's a lot of existing things that we need to be, we need to learn them, and we need to collect more knowledge about the existing frameworks that we actually have, and to be able to combine all these different sources and the existing way of working that we have today, and look on that. And also to include data schema mapping. You need to add these different sources and connect them, APIs, etc. And doing this, we need to look on different use cases. So really work from the use case to define the requirements and the needs that we have for different use cases. So there they mention the actual handover of asset inventory, to just keep a track of the different inventory and objects that you have in your structures. Various inspections, renewal of tracks, managed water in tunnels. So there were a lot of ideas on different use cases that we should include. And I think one of the things that were mentioned in all of these different questions that we had was the requirement for new competencies, knowledge, work with the right people. We actually had that challenge before this workshop, to be able to include the right people in the workshop. So the competence is really crucial. And that is also something that we see when we discuss how we can actually deliver this project. Again, the people is a huge part of that, to include the right people. And also the legal side of things as well, with the contractual frameworks, use the right templates, make it easy. So to be successful, we need to make it easy. And include the right stakeholders. So again, the people, to be able to get everybody on board that we need for this project to actually be able to execute and deliver successfully. Yeah, I think that's it. And you can read the rest by yourself. So people and reference projects, for example.
Thank you. I asked Anna to step in there because she pulled this information out of the Miro board, and to me, they were a lot of words, and you can look at them later, but our report will flesh this out much more thoroughly. The last slide here is the critical use cases, and here this is the result of the voting. I'm not going to go through them all because we've run out of time, but you can see that some of the things that came out under maintenance, it was the handover of asset inventory information. Operations, the key one was linking structured and unstructured data. How do we do that? And the issue of integration of BIM, GIS and AOT and other things is seen as very important. And under space management, there was the proposal, the suggestion and handling of zones to manage accessibility and safety during maintenance was a key use case. So these are the use cases that came out. We now have the task of pulling all this together and thinking about how we can build on this information as we go forward. And I think that's it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, Anna and Tiina. I think in the interest of time, we'll press on because we're about halfway through this session. So I'm going to we're moving on to the bridge topic, as you can see. And Ronald is about to magically appear on the stage for people online. I don't think I can make him appear, unfortunately, in the room. But Ronald, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yes, we can hear you. So please do go ahead and provide us with an update on the Bridge Test Instructions project.
Yes, thank you very much for your invitation, and my apologies that I couldn't make it to the summit, but I hope I can transfer the knowledge of and results of the project online. So I can ask you to move the sheets, Sean?
Yep, you prompt me and I'll move the slides, yeah.
Yes. So this is me presenting at the Beijing workshop of buildingSMART. I worked some time on the test instructions for alignment-based reference view, and Bridge is part of that. I'm going to present the test instructions for Bridge today. for you to understand what our test instructions are about and to have some better knowledge of what's the purpose of that. This is the team I'm representing. So we have developers from the hard code, Tiina, and also Jeffrey Olet is a representative from ASHTO for USA, bringing in also some feedback from their developments and use cases they are working on. So we could take this into account. There's kindly support from Laura 10, and we have 4 stakeholders we were in touch in trying to stand where on what kind of test structures we should focus on. So I'm going to explain some examples, and I will do that based on a simple example, which is common for everyone, hopefully. Because a lot of technical terms, and to prevent everyone get lost in this, I would like to explain it from a easy point of view. So first of all, what our test instructions are about. Test instructions are made to actually the target group are the software vendors, who like to apply IC4.3 and the alignment-based reference view in particular. So they would like to test if they have implemented this IC4.3 properly. And in order to do that, we need some test instructions so they can test if they do an implementation, if the outcome will be like it is intended to be. To make these test instructions understandable, we base them on a user demand input. So we say, okay, what are the things which are common to be asked to be used in practice. So if we have some common user demand test instructions, then we are implementing the right things in the software. The results of the test instructions will be an input for the buildingSMART International Validation Service, and later on for the certification service. That means that you can understand it like kind of business rules. You can automate so that you can import the BIM model and you can check on certain rules to understand if you have implemented your software properly, and you can do that with sample sets of BIM models. So the next slide, please. So, and I try to explain you what test instructions are about. So if you look at it's a pizza slice, and you have 2 pizza bakers in town who would like to have exact the same pizza slice, then you have to make arrangements between them. So you must understand, okay, what should the bottom of the pizza look like? What are the layers we are going to use? What are the ingredients we will put on the pizza slice, and how should they be related together? Because only if you can make that very precise, if you can explain it, how the receipts should exactly be, then this is the only way how you can be sure that you have the same kind of pizza slice in 2 pizza bakeries. And and then the question is, if you made that, how can you test that? And this is where the test instructions are for, so that you're able to write the test instructions to be sure that you can bake the same kind of pizza slice with the same ingredients, the same layers, the same bottom, the same kind of things. And this is actually what we're also doing with the civil infrastructure, so like bridges and tunnels. That we say, okay, how should a tunnel or bridge be modeled, and how can we test that it has been implemented properly by the software vendors? So if you go to the next example, so we have still the pizza slice, and now I introduce some IC terms to understand, to make you understand what we did, because there were some technical concepts which will be introduced. First of all, in IC we have classes, and if you look at this pizza slice, you can maybe say, okay, we have the class pizza slice, IC pizza slice, and the class IC pizza bottom. And we can also define a p-set of the pizza slice, which will include the pizza crust, sauce, cheese, the toppings, vegetable and meat, and the combination of how it should be used to make this nice pizza slice is a concept template. So in IC we use a concept template where it is defined which classes should be used, which relationships, when it is applied. So in this case, if I would make a test instruction, I have to be sure that all the ingredients are included and the toppings are in the correct layer, so that I have not the cheese on the bottom, but the cheese on top of the pizza slice. So this is how you can understand IC. So if you go to the next slide. So because if I have a whole pizza, then and the pizza represents the IC scheme. The IC scheme is very big, and it includes also not only infrastructure but also buildings and other things. And if you would like to test bridges, then you have to define what kind of the IC scheme should I select in order to have the right implementation, because I don't need everything of it. And that's the same what we did for the test instructions for alignment-based reference view, and for the then in particular for bridge, is to make a selection of what concept templates do we need from the IC scheme in order to define the specific scope. And if you look at the website from buildingSMART International, you can see what entities are part of the alignment-based reference view, which is abbreviated by ABRV. And you see also the abbreviation RV, which is saying the reference view. And so then you see, okay, what is included. And excuse me, these are not the entities; these are the concept templates. So we first looked, okay, what are the concept templates which are part of the alignment-based reference view, and from that selection we defined the concept templates which are particularly meant to be for the bridge scope. And then you have the selection of the whole bridge scope. And then secondly, yes, you can go to the next one. So for bridge, for instance, if you look at what kind of concept templates did we use, when you need a concept template to tell something about the project, some project information, because you can understand that a bridge is part of a project. It is also part of a site, so you need the concept template for the site. And then bridge particularly has a superstructure and substructure, so we also need the concept template for the superstructure and substructure. But then it's a question, there are a lot of concept templates, we can make thousands of test instructions, but what kind of test instructions would we like to make? And for that purpose, we asked the stakeholders, okay, what should be your focus on these test instructions, and they came with a guideline which has been made by the IC43 team, and the bridge work group already made some international requirements some years ago, and said it would be logical if we look at this guideline and understand what has been required from a user perspective, and we try to make test instructions based on these requirements, because then we are focusing on a user demand perspective. At the same time, Ashton was also preparing some tests and for their contractors, and we said, okay, that would be good to understand what kind of use cases they have, and if we can have some examples which we can also take into account, so we can have good sample sets and examples for making the test instructions. And now I will give you some example of test instruction be based on the sample set of H2. They said, okay, we have here an example of a bridge, a simple bridge, and it should have an abutment on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. It should have 2 piers, and that should have a deck. And if we have this, please tell us how the software vendor should implement this in their software. So how should this model be mapped into to the IC43? And so actually we said, okay, if you should model this, then you need at least the site concept template. The concept templates, the site is superstructure and substructure. And inside these concept templates, all the relations, all the entities, related objects are part of that. And of course, this is one example, but if you have another example from another bridge, it can have 3 piers or 4 piers, but we still should be able to use the same kind of information from the IC model to come to the same results. So this sample set is just to check if this sample can be used for a generic implementation, which is valid not only for H2 but also for other stakeholders. But the thing is, because we had this sample set, it was we could use it and also to validate after following the test if the correct bridge model would be the result of that, so that we have 2 piers and we have 2 abutments. So if it is represented correctly in the software. So the next slide, yeah. So if you look one step deeper, so I introduced with the pizza slice that you have a concept template or even more concept templates, and these concept templates tell us how the selection, a specific selection of the IC scheme should be used, what should be entailed. And for the bridge, yeah, we have to be specific, so you go more into details, otherwise the software vendors can't understand what they should use. And here you see for a site, for instance, you have you will need the. No, I can't read it myself now. It's like the IC site, and for superstructure you should choose other entities. And every test structure is built like this. You choose a concept template. You're looking inside. What do you need from that? And the next example shows how the spatial decomposition has been built up, because you should have a generic way of making a spatial decomposition, a spatial structure of how the bridge is built up. And also here, we have defined what concept templates do we use, how are the objects related, how can you make sure that you can make this spatial structure in a generic way. And if you have another bridge, it should follow the same rules. And then one step deeper is if you look at one entity, one object as part of the spatial structure, you can also go more deep into that one. You can also specify for that type what parts you need from the IC scheme. So this is then the example. I don't go further because otherwise everyone will fall asleep because it will be very technical. So I won't.
We're still here, Ronald. Don't worry.
Yes. So then the next slide, please. It's the same, yes. Yeah. So what I showed you is just an example of how test instructions are built up, and we have made some of them. We are not finished, but we are quite far. So we have made some different test instructions from different perspectives for Bridge, made by our developers team, and we are now are checking and merging them together so that we can deliver it and also deliver the documentation for that. And this is scheduled for the end of November. So then we'll have a final set of the test instructions for the bridge, and we can add these to the existing one for the alignment-based reference view. Yeah, we checked with buildingSMART International. We said, okay, we'll be ready soon. What are you going to do with these test instructions? And it was confirmed that they will be used as an input for the validation service, and it will be made part of the certification, software certification. That means that if they are available, that every software vendor who likes to validate the implementation of the software against RISD 4.3, or if the software vendor would like to ask for certification, that they can expect that these kind of test instructions will be used to for validation and certification purposes. So now I came to the end of my presentation. So if there are any questions.
Thanks, Ronald.
Go to the next presentation. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, that was great. If you don't mind holding on, I think we're going to invite Alexa Mitchell to come up and talk to us about the BIM for Bridges project. And then we'll take, if we have time, we're covering a lot of ground in this session. It's going well so far. We've left Alexa about 30 minutes. If we have time at the end, then we will take some questions on any aspects that have been raised. But Alexa, I'll hand over to you.
All right, thank you. Can the folks online hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. And I do have quite a few slides, but given the time, I'm going to try to move a little quickly because I'd really like to leave some time for some Q&A. I think that's where the most value will happen here. So thank you. I'm going to be talking about the project that Ronald mentioned in his presentation, which is the BIM for Bridges and Structures Pool Fund. My name is Alexa Mitchell, and I am the Transportation Enterprise Digital Delivery Services Director for HDR and the Principal Investigator or Technical Lead for the BIM for Bridges and Structures project. And I'm here on behalf of my client, the Transportation Pool Fund, that we've been referring to as AASHTO, but it is a group of, a large group of state Department of Transportation in the U.S. in the Federal Highway Administration. So I'm going to very quickly give you a project overview so that you can understand why we're even here, the progress that has happened in the past year and some of the ongoing work. And then I'm going to conclude with a little update on the next steps after this project is finished. And if we have time, we'll go some Q&A and open discussion. We have an issue with that one. That's good. All right. It's all right. So the project, we have a website that you can find a lot of this information in, is BIM, BIM for Bridges, should be somewhere here, but there is, BIMforbridgesus.com. And this is our roadmap. And the reason I like to start with this, because it really gives you a little bit of the background of the project. This is a 5-year project. We are in the last year of the project. And when we started 5 years ago, the landscape of open data standards looked very differently. So we've had to pivot and make decisions along the way and learn through those learning opportunities. So originally we had a project that had we wanted 4 different outcomes out of this project. We wanted to have an information delivery manual that could be authoritative, so that each owner in the U.S., and in this case 50 state DOTs, could use the same standards in an authoritative manual type base, so human readable. When we started, we thought that we were going to be creating a model view definition. Very quickly change as the standards change. And so, of course, that is now going to be an IDS to be in compliance with the IDM. But the last 2 things are probably the ones that we're focusing most in the last few years, in the last couple of years, is just the development of software certification materials, meaning test instructions that could be passed on to the software and to BSI as a community, so that software vendors could use them to, very similar to what Ronald mentioned earlier, that are the test instructions to help them getting prepared for that certification process or the validation service process. And then obviously how to deploy these standards that are now newly developed at the stakeholder level. So how do they implement the standards? How do they write the requirements for all their projects and the use cases being supported? So what you see in the roadmap is many activities that have happened over the years. So what I love about this project is we're building on the progress that other people have brought to the community. And so what you see, everything in blue is done by others. Everything in green, as you see, are the activities of the project itself. And then some of the red is some of the things that we're proposing for the future. This roadmap is very out of date. There's just a lot of things that have happened even in the last year. So we're going to be updating it. But that just gives you a little bit of the landscape here. These are the sponsors of the project. So 24 state DOTs and the Federal Highway Administration have been provided the funding from the very beginning. And I got ahead of myself, but there you go. All right. So why are we even doing this, right? So in the US, AASHTO is the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, and they are the standard organization for state departments of transportation. So it is the best way to get 50 state DOTs to agree on something through this organization. But the vision was very clear from the very beginning. At the national level, all bridge owners wanted to develop a national standard that could be followed for enabling open data exchange of very specifically bridge structures, right, using the IFC. And so while the vision is to complete the entire life cycle, right, with open data standards, the focus of the phase one of this project was that data exchange that happens between design to construction. So we were not tackling asset management in this use case. It was just really that exchange from design to construction and initiation of fabrication. So I just wanted to make that clear that that is the focus of the project, the scope. But why a national standard? As you can imagine, 50 state DOTs, many contractors, many consultants, design consultants work for many of the same owners, and you had to reinvent the wheel every time, right? And so, but what we're seeing is that this desire to implement digital delivery is what we're calling BIM in the US now, is that we want to really get rid of plan sheets altogether. We want to be able to focus on the model itself and the information itself, so that we spend more time in detailing those types of things rather than notes and on the sheets. And so what we're looking at is being able to deliver the model at the time of construction as the legal document or a legal deliverable, if you will, contractually binding deliverable. Because we want to collect better as-built, and we really want to enhance that collaboration among all stakeholders. And so to be able to do that, we have to drive standardization. We can't have 50 different recipes for the pizza slice, right? We have to have one. We all have to agree to one. And that's really what is driving standardization. And honestly, all the things that are needed to do all the other things so that we are collaborating, we are able to verify compliance through that quality check, that we can repeat and reproduce these procedures so that there is better automation, because we don't have enough people to do what we need to do anyway. So we need to leverage technology as much as possible. But this allows us to innovate. And we wanted to make sure that we were leveraging the best technology, digital information, that we were focusing on interoperability and reliability, but more important, we want to be accessible and equitable to all the parties involved in a project. All right, moving on to the project timeline. I know this is a very busy slide, but it's the best we could do to kind of bring it all into one area. So what this illustrates is that we've been very busy for quite some time. 5 years is a long time, but we felt that this, or at least in the way that we approached the project, we couldn't find that anybody else had done this. So we had to figure out from the very beginning where we were starting and where we were going. And so the first year, it was really about investigating what others had done so that we wouldn't recreate work that had already been done. So we spent a whole year just doing investigations and trying to figure out what was out there. From the very beginning, we understood that without industry involved, this could never be successful. So day one, even though we didn't have a whole lot to share, we made it very clear that if you wanted to be part of the solution, you needed to be involved from the very beginning. And so we had a software vendor engagement plan. And as we had information, we had workshops every year, and Jeff Olet is leading that task. And we had just in progress product as we went along, being very transparent with the software vendor community, that if we didn't have enough information to share, we would say so. But if we did, this is where we are, and you know where we are at every stage of that project. We also had a component of an economic analysis because our owners wanted to have tangible results improving the ROI. I think everybody kind of understand the return on investment and that it makes sense. But at the executive level, many of our owners struggle to implement this open data standards and BIM in general, just because they couldn't prove tangibly to the decision makers that is worth the investment compared to other initiatives that the agencies may have related to safety or something else. So how do you compete with limited resources? And that was the idea. But most of the work that we've done is in what we call this task called IFC development, and really is more than IFC comprehensively, right? So we created a process map. We are starting to create unit test instructions in the IDM publication. And we had a lot of these products that were in progress, and there are, light versions of what the final product would be. And the last task here, which also kind of happened throughout the time of the project, is education and engagement. We created a stakeholder engagement and communication plan, identified the stakeholders that we needed to be reaching out to, and how we were going to engage with all the stakeholders at that point. We created that collaboration forum, which is just really a website that we can put information to, bimforbridgesus.com, where you can find the roadmap. And a lot of the in-progress products are already on the website. And so you can go in and download all the information, view all the information. It is part of the collaboration process. So we have a calendar of events, and it's just for events that are related to our stakeholders that may be participating. So they give us a list and we populate the calendar. We have resources, and the way that we organized it were by audience, right? So if you come to this website, we wanted to make sure that you weren't trying to figure out what was what. So we created, if you are a state DOT, an owner, a bridge owner, or a bridge engineer working on a project, that these may be the products that you may be interested in, versus software developers, totally different audience. So we wanted to make easy this finding of information. And then there is so many initiatives in the US, but in the world happening. And there's a lot of research that is happening. So we wanted to connect people with those other resources so that it could be a one-stop shop. But we didn't want to duplicate content. So we just directed people to those other locations as much as possible. But the thing that I am most proud and more excited about sharing with you, this happened last year. But the information delivery manual, it is available. It is a standard publication by AASHTO. So technically, yeah, it is, something that needs to be purchased. But what we like about this, it is authoritative. If it is a standard by AASHTO, that means it's authoritative. So if a state DOT decides to put in their contract requirements that the project shall comply with the IDM for the design to construction data exchange for highway bridges, that's the authoritative. And so you could technically create your own IDSs and your own resources based on this human readable format. And the reason this was significant and important is because any highway or any bridge engineer can pick this up and understand the requirements in plain English. And that was the number one thing that our owners asked. I am not a programmer. I don't do software developer. And if I am making the contract requirements, I'm not even the design team. So I need to understand what to ask for in plain language so that I can contractually require it and validate that the requirements were met. And that is the only way to do that. And that's why we put a lot of emphasis on that manual. And there is no different to any of the other manuals that AASHTO has for the state DOT. So anything related to geometric design or structural design, they're going to be in the same location. As I mentioned, lots of things have happened, but in the past year is where we have made the biggest advancements. So we do have an IDS, and if you're interested, AEC3 is the sub-consultant on our team that is working on the IDS. So I know that Thomas Leibich is here. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, you can talk to him about it. One of the things that we wanted to make sure before we moved on with the IDS is that the ABRV was going to be sufficient and that we didn't need to actually create another MVD of any kind. And we determined that at this point, it is sufficient. So we are continuing the development of the unit test suite. And if you want to know more about that, you can contact Jeff Olette. I want to mention, because I didn't earlier, is that the type of structure that we're supporting with this is what we call in the US workhorse bridges, which are the most commonly found bridges in the US. So not your signature bridges. These are your 2-3 span bridge, very simple, that are on every road that we cross and go unnoticed. So not the very fancy bridges per se. So as we said earlier, we started with this idea that we were going to create an MVD, but we quickly switched to make sure that we were following the framework established by BSI. And so this is where we start looking at those international or national organizational and project-based type standards. And we felt that the ABRV at the international level is what we wanted to focus on, or we wanted to base this. We determined that a use case specific MVD was not needed. And we put all of our efforts into that IDS development. So I mentioned, and probably not for this audience here, so I'm going to skip, but this is what's important for the owners of this project, or the sponsors of this project, that we needed to make the connection between engineering contract requirements and IFC-ish, as we call it, requirements, so that we can explain to people very easily what does it mean and why are we doing this project. And for those people that are not familiar with the open data standards, this was really important for us. The way that this will work, we do have a very large set of exchange requirements in the IDM. So we are producing one IDS, but it could be, if you take a look at it, you could break it up and only use the pieces that you want. But the client really wanted one IDS that could suffice this particular use case of exchange of information between design and construction. And so this is a very specific use case, which would happen at the very end of the project when the project has been completely designed at 100%. In the US, our advertisement of project is very different. Most of projects are what we call design bid build. So the contractor doesn't get to see the project files until 100% done, and it is advertised in a slow bid. And so that was very important also, that we would have that IDS to validate that final check at bidding and letting process. And so we have done some examples of trying to run the current IDS using the ACA IDS checker. So I just wanted to note that. So we are testing it with the current tools available in the market. Like I mentioned, you can take that IDS when it's completed and edit it however you need to, take parts of it, or, create something for being used at the different phases of the life cycle of a project during design and so on. We are also working on a data dictionary, and that is another very exciting part and deliverable for this project. The way that this is going to work is that we're going to have an AASHTO domain. What the name of the data dictionary is not yet determined. We are looking at potentially having something called AASHTO Bridge or just AASHTO, with the idea that other disciplines may contribute to the data dictionary, but at this point, it's only going to be bridges that are in the data dictionary. All of the items going into the data dictionary were reviewed by our bridge engineers to make sure that the information was, defined correctly based on what a bridge engineer would call things. And it is based on what we call the AASHTO LFRD bridge design specification. And that is basically the primary design specification for the US that all bridge engineers use. And also we took a look at the Bridge Inspector's Reference Manual, which is a federal highway publication. And the AASHTO Transportation Glossary. We wanted to make sure that whatever we were defining in the data dictionary had an authoritative source. And then we also understood, as we started talking to the different DOTs, is that different people call the same thing different things. And so instead of repeating the terms, we simply had a column for synonyms. So you should be able to find different things depending on what you call it at the regional level. And so we are in the process of finalizing that. And like I said, if you were to do a search right now in the BSDD, what you will find is a very light example of what we are proposing. But we are looking at being completed by the end of January of 24, so that it will be completed and it will be available in the BSDD for anybody to search. These are some of the examples, right? So most of the information obviously is being created by the IFC experts, but we wanted to make sure that we were working with the bridge engineers, as I mentioned, to say, does the definition really make sense from a bridge engineering perspective? So that we all are in agreement. So that's one of the things that we did. So far, like I mentioned in the previous years, software vendor engagement was very quiet because we didn't have anything to show. We were just having those conversations. However, this year in 2023, that effort has been ramping up, and Jeff Ouellette holds bi-weekly meetings with the software vendors. And what happens during those meetings is they give us a preview of their progress on how they're implementing the very preliminary information that we're providing. And we had a workshop, which we like to have every year. And we have very, very good attendance. If you're interested on what these instructions look like, this is a snapshot of that. All the information that Jeff is sharing with the software developers is in GitHub. So if you're not involved, if you're a software developer and you're not involved in this effort, simply contact Jeff and he will add you to the invitation of meetings so that you can contribute. You can be just a listener if you want as well.
We're getting close to time, Alexa. So
yes.
I don't know whether you want to just sum up and we'll see if there's any questions we can take before we finish.
Yeah. So I think what I want to leave with is phase 2. What happens after January 31st, 2024? There is a phase 2. The owners were so satisfied with the progress of this project that they decided to fund a second phase to look at potentially more development of IDSs. So different use cases, what those use cases are, we haven't determined, but we're looking at least, depending on the level of effort, at least 3 more use cases in terms of the standards. We believe that we can move a lot quicker now that we have established a framework, and it's not going to be as hard as it was. So far, we have 15 states that have committed funds to second phase. So with that, I'm just going to give it back to you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Alexa. Thank you to Alexa, and thank you to Ronald, who's still with us online. I can see him on the online platform. We're more or less at time, but we do have time for maybe one or two quick questions. If there are any comments or questions that anyone would like to raise in the room, please let me know, and I'll give you this microphone. No? Well, we've covered a lot of ground today in this first infrastructure domain session. So thank you to all of our presenters. Thanks for Tiina for introducing the session, to Jim and to Anna for AOH and the roadmap, and in particular to Ronald. Do you want to say hello again, Ronald?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you everyone for listening. And, I will be there next time.
Excellent. We look forward to that. And thank you to Alexa as well. So this is the conclusion of Infrastructure Domain Session 1. We'll be back in this room in an hour's time, immediately after lunch at 2 o'clock, when there'll be a joint session of infrastructure and railway looking at BSDD. See you then. Thank you.